It's meme time, it's meme time. Gather all your friends, it's meme time. It's meme time, it's meme time. The only cure for sadness.
Thriller Bark Saga, Thriller Bark Arc. After sailing for some time on the Thousand Sunny, Luffy and the rest of the crew found themselves in the presence of a ghost ship. Wanting to explore the ship, Luffy along with Sanji and Nami climbed aboard. There they met a skeleton named Brook. When Luffy asked him to join his crew, the skeleton eagerly accepted. Luffy then brought Brook back to the Thousand Sunny to show to the rest of the crew, much to their dismay. Over dinner, Brook explained his past, and later explained that he really can't join Luffy due to his current condition of having his shadow stolen. Luffy, really wanting to have Brook as a member, promised to get Brook's shadow back no matter what. This pleased Brook so much that the skeleton decided to perform before the crew with his violin, revealing he's a musician. Just as Brook was about to perform, a ghost appeared, as well as the gates of a strange island. Thriller Bark. These events prompted Brook to head to the island before Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats' eyes. With Luffy's resolve to go to the island to get his long-awaited musician, in fact nearly since the beginning of his journey, and to explore the island, Franky and Robin decided to join him also. After witnessing Franky's present to the Straw Hats, Luffy and the rest of the Straw Hats decided to look for Nami, Usopp, and Chopper, who had not returned. However, before Luffy and the rest could go to the island, they were stopped by an invisible thing. After the Thousand Sunny got caught in what was apparently a spider web, Luffy and the rest descended to the island. There they met the Cerberus, which Luffy thought of eating, soon followed by even more strange creatures. At one point they came across some ghosts, one of which Luffy tried to catch. The ghost was unaffected and instead passed through Luffy and temporarily drained his will to go on. After recovering, the group meets with some zombies. Luffy and the rest defeat the zombies with a combo technique. Luffy then asks the zombies about his 3 friends that came by earlier. The zombies inadvertently revealed that they attacked them when they showed up. For this, Luffy and the rest shoved the zombies back into the graves headfirst. The group then met with Spoil, a zombie-looking old man who asked them to defeat Gecko Moria, who had stolen his shadow and the shadows of others like him. Robin then explained that Moria was a Shichibukai with a former bounty higher than Luffy's. With plans to actually beat Moria, Luffy agreed to help the old man and the others who had their shadows stolen. As it began to rain, Luffy and the others discovered that Thriller Bark was actually a ship. With their goal in mind, they ventured into Moria's mansion. Inside the mansion, Luffy and the others fought against the zombies in the dining hall. After the battle, he and the others noticed that Sanji was missing. With nothing else to do in the room, Luffy and the others decided to take Buhichuk, the leader of the zombies in the room, along in order to have him guide them to the rest of their friends. As Luffy left the room, the zombies told him to be scared of Moria's wrath for what Luffy and his friends did in the dining hall. Luffy, in response, merely replied that he will kick Moria's ass. After walking a while with Buhichuk as their hostage, Luffy, Robin, and Franky suddenly noticed that Zoro is missing too. The situation was beginning to become suspicious. Later, Luffy found a suit of armor and decided to don it. After a while, the three came upon an arena-like area. There, Luffy and Robin witnessed the bout between Franky and a general zombie. After watching it for a while, Luffy's group were suddenly trapped in the room by Buhichuk. There, they were forced to fight a large group of general zombies. In the middle of the battle, Luffy found himself face to face with a general zombie with 3 swords like Zoro. Before Luffy could get a clear answer from Jigoro, who was caught off guard by some spider mice zombies, Luffy was then sealed in a coffin by the spider mice with their webbing, and was then sent to the main mast of Thriller Bark. Luffy was brought afterwards before Gecko Moria. After being stripped of his armor, Luffy had his shadow stolen by Moria through the use of the power of the devil fruit Moria ate, the Kage no Mi. Upon being separated from his shadow, Luffy fell into a coma. With Luffy's shadow in Moria's hands, Moria decided to put it in the 900th zombie, Oars. Having his shadow finished being extracted, Luffy was then brought back to the Thousand Sunny by some spider mice. After being placed in the Thousand Sunny's kitchen along with Sanji and Zoro, Usopp managed to wake them up, after being briefed on what happened while they were out. With Nami and 3 of their shadows taken, Luffy and the others planned to take them back. Luffy was then informed by Franky of Brook's relationship with Laboon. Even more excited by this information, Luffy is even more decided to have the skeleton join their crew. With this, Luffy and his crew decided to take back from Moria what he stole from them and their friends, with the determination to get everything back before dawn arrives. Luffy and his crew split into 2 teams, with part of his team headed to save Nami and himself headed to defeat Moria. Luffy's team purified several zombies with some salt from Usopp. As they rampaged through and purified Moria's zombie horde, Luffy and Sanji unfortunately got subdued by more of Perona's ghosts. Fortunately, however, they were saved by the rest of the team before the zombies could get to them. Just as things were getting chaotic enough, Oars, the zombie with Luffy's shadow, came crashing into the part of the building Luffy's team was in, and separated part of the building as well as part of Luffy's team. With only Robin and Chopper left with him, Luffy and the two decided to continue towards Moria, seeing that the others would not be beaten so easily. As the three continued onward, they were stopped in Moria's dance hall by Hogback and Sindri. Fortunately, however, Robin and Chopper were able to hold off these two long enough for Luffy to slip past them. Luffy finally reached Moria, and after a short conversation, started attacking the Shichibukai. However, as soon as Luffy threw a punch, Moria used his own shadow, Doppelman, to fight in his stead. Undeterred by this seemingly invincible being, Luffy was still able to land a hit on Moria himself by attacking the Shichibukai from an indirect place. However, despite using this tactic for some time, Luffy was still unable to land a direct clean hit on Moria. This continued until Oars came back to the freezer and started obeying Moria's orders fully. Once Moria gave Oars the order to completely annihilate all of the Straw Hats, the zombie began to attack Luffy. Luffy dodged the blow and started to chase after Moria, who had decided to run away from the chaos that was about to ensue. As Luffy chased after Moria, he was led deep within the forest of Thriller Bark. However, as Luffy was chasing Moria, the Shichibukai tricked Luffy into chasing Doppelman. Upon realizing what happened, Luffy was left stranded in the middle of the forest. Seeing that dawn was fast approaching, Luffy immediately tried to find his way back to the masked mansion. However, while running around lost in the forest, Luffy encountered the group that the old man, Spoil, was head of, the Thriller Bark Victims Association. With some convincing by the members of the association, the Risky Bros of the Rolling Pirates, Luffy was told that they knew a way to beat Moria. Through some explanations by the Risky Brothers' Captain Lola, Luffy was told of the process of using captured shadows to power oneself up for 10 minutes. Luffy was implanted with 100 shadows that the Thriller Bark Victims Association had collected over the years and became a vastly larger blue being that was dubbed Nightmare Luffy. With this newfound strength and skills bestowed by the shadows, Luffy rushed off to Masked Mansion, where Oars and Moria were battling against his crew and Brook. Arriving just in the nick of time to save both Nami and Usopp from Oars, Luffy immediately started battling against the zombie. He easily overpowered him with his devastating attacks, wounding Moria as a result as well. With the execution of his final move, Gomu Gomu no Storm, Luffy's 10-minute limit was up. However, Luffy had inflicted so much damage onto Oars that the behemoth completely toppled over into the Masked Mansion. Though Luffy was exhausted by having so many shadows implanted within him, the battle was still not over, for Oars rose back up to continue battling on. Despite their wounds, Luffy, his crew, and Brook rose back up as well and started one last combined attack against the zombie. While the rest of his crew began to restrict Oars' movement, Luffy was brought to the top of Thriller Bark with help from Brooks' high jumps and Robin's ability. At the top, Luffy was then thrown down towards a restricted Oars. As Luffy fell, he activated Gear 3 and landed a crippling blow to Oars, shattering the zombie's spine and rendering him incapable of moving anymore. Despite Luffy's strong will within him, Oars was no longer able to move. However, while Oars was indeed finally defeated, Luffy and the other shadowless victims still had to get Moria to return all of their shadows before the rising dawn incinerated them. Unfortunately, despite receiving the blunt of Luffy's attack, Gekko Moria managed to rise back up, and instead of giving back their shadows, the Shichibukai replied with his horrifying technique, Shadows Asgard. Despite Moria's transformation into a giant monstrosity, time getting dangerously over before dawn, and all the fatigue and wounds from earlier, Luffy readied himself to fight Moria one last time. As Luffy battled against Moria to the limit, with Gear 2 techniques that made Moria spew out some shadows, dawn was quickly approaching. Eventually, with time practically almost over, Luffy decided to stack his gear transformations on top of one another in order to perform a reckless move, Gomu Gomu no Gigant Jet Shell, to use against Moria. As Luffy attacked Moria with his move, and just as the first signs of dawn started to incinerate both Luffy and the others, Luffy asked his own shadow to come back to him if it wanted to become Pirate King. Then, with one last use of Gomu Gomu no Gigant Jet Shell, Luffy was able to topple down Moria, unable to hold his stolen shadows any longer. With this, Luffy's shadow and all of the other shadows of those in Thriller Bark returned to their original owners just in time to save them. With everyone's shadows finally returned and Moria finally defeated, Luffy collapsed from all of the fatigue and pain he experienced from the night beforehand. While things seemed finally over, the celebration was however cut short with the arrival of Bartholomew Kuma. The second Shichibukai, having seen and reported the whole event to the world government, was ordered to take out Luffy as well as eliminate everyone else on the island who witnessed Luffy's victory over Moria. The battle for an unconscious Luffy then ensued between the second Shichibukai and everyone else left standing willing to protect Luffy. In the end, Zoro asked if he could exchange his life for Luffy's. Impressed by Zoro's loyalty, Kuma pushed all of the pain from the battle from Luffy's body with his ability and implanted it into Zoro, to make him feel Luffy's pain. After Kuma left and a day of rest went by, an energetic Luffy decided to celebrate their victory with everyone. As the party went on, Luffy noticed Brook playing a familiar song on a piano. Remembering that this was a song that Shanks and his crew used to sing all the time, Luffy got into a conversation with Brook. As Brook played and the conversation went on, Luffy once again asked Brook to join his crew. Brook once again turned down Luffy's offer since the skeleton still had some things to do. Knowing what he was talking about, Luffy revealed to Brook that not only did he learn about the skeleton's relationship with Laboon, but also told him that Laboon was alive and well. Having told Brook this, Luffy touched Brook's heart and made the skeleton burst into tears of joy. As the party got more joyous, with Brook bringing out a tone dial with the last musical performance of the Rumbar Pirates on it, Luffy was asked by Brook if he could join his crew. For this, Luffy casually agreed, much to the shock of most of the crew. With this very casual acceptance, Luffy finally got the musician he so longed for since his journey as a pirate began. After 2 days of recuperation, Luffy and his crew decided to leave Thriller Bark for Fishman Island. As they were about to leave, they were introduced to the concept of the Vivre card by Lola. Remembering the piece of paper that Ace gave to him, Luffy took out the Vivre card that his brother gave to him. Upon taking it out, however, Luffy noticed that Ace's Vivre card was burning a little and becoming smaller. With this, Luffy was explained that Ace's life was slowly vanishing. Dismissing the Vivre card's state as Ace having his own adventure, Luffy and his crew sailed away from Thriller Bark and on to Fishman Island.
L is for lovers who love one another. A is for ass, of which I like to eat. U is for you're the only one for me. G is for the only gamer I see. H is for happy, I'm always feeling. When you put them together, what do you get? Put them together, what do you get? What do you get?